Facebook and YouTube are filled with animal videos, cats and dogs doing super goofy things. My sister and I regularly send these to each other. Among the most fascinating to me are the images of odd playmates. I have a little video here for you.
Is it a wolf or a sheep or wolf in sheep's clothing?
Today, วันนี้หนีเข้าบ้านมาขอนอนกับพี่ๆวัวทองกับพวกนี้เขารักกันนะครับเขานอนอยู่ด้วยกันตลอด
Doggy's friendliness makes him an endless friend list. Have a nice day.
I think these videos are fascinating and entertaining, but they're not really new in the world of odd animal playmates. From 1820 to 1849, Edward Hicks created 62 variations of his painting, The Peaceable Kingdom. These paintings featured predators and prey lying down together in peace and a rosy-cheeked child, the Christ child, leading them. In several versions, there appears to be a tree stump, an allusion to a verse earlier in Isaiah 11. A shoot will grow up from the stump of Jesse. A branch will sprout from its roots. The Lord's Spirit will rest upon him, a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of planning and strength, a spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. In the Christian tradition, we interpret these verses to mean the coming of Christ. Edward Hicks was an artist as well as a Quaker preacher. In the Quaker tradition of simplicity and usefulness, he was often criticized for earning a living as a painter. Artwork was considered frivolous, yet Quaker preachers were never paid. During the time he painted, the Quakers experienced a split in their denomination. And around the edge of this painting are the verses from today's passage in Isaiah. As I said, Hicks created 62 versions of this work, and over time, a change was noticed. There's a gradual shift in tone over time from an idealism to a cynicism regarding the actual possibility of peace on earth. His early paintings show animals in joyful company with one another. His middle period, some of the animals appear exhausted. By the late period, carnivores bare their teeth in a hostility to each other. Hicks wrote later in life that all the interfaith ranting and division had dissipated his hope of ever seeing peace in the here and now, like the kingdom that Isaiah envisioned. And that realization only caused him to cling to Christ tighter. The prophet Isaiah wrote these poetic works long before the turbulence in which Edward Hicks lived. The Assyrians were at war with the Israelites, and Isaiah was announcing a future king that would inaugurate the rule of peace with justice. Isaiah creates an image of hope, showing us the power of compassion. In turbulent times, hope is needed. Today is no different. Research tells us that human beings seek cohesion and belonging, especially in difficult times. What we do is hang on to our general ideologies very tight. Some of them red, some of them blue. We want to be winners and recognize in ourselves and each other that we need compassion in order to dispel our sense of hopelessness. The color of compassion is purple, and it is a place where we are able to love ourselves and one another on a deeper level, and our actions come from a place of compassion. Compassion includes empathy, which is feeling with another person, rather than sympathy, which is feeling for another. When compassion is present, there is a space where all are treated with dignity, our human limitations are accepted, and our abilities are encouraged. When we do unto others, we develop self-awareness of our prejudices and have a desire to expand the limits that we have placed upon others. From the image of hope illustrated by Isaiah's poetry, we see some powerful elements of compassion. An element of compassion is that a peaceable kingdom is inclusive of all God's creation, especially known enemies. During the turbulence and beginning of the civil rights movement in the late 1960s and early 1970s, there were glimpses of hope born of compassion. C.P. Ellis was the president of the KKK in Durham, North Carolina, and Ann Atwater was a black civil rights leader. They were complete opposites in ideology, race, and ideas about civil rights and power. The only two things they had in common was their low economic status and the power they had in their respective communities. In 1971, Ann and CP found themselves in a charrette, which is a short-term problem-solving group led by organizer Bill Riddick. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the public school education after a mandatory and controversial desegregation law was passed in Durham in 1970. Ann and CP were invited to co-chair the meetings. All sides of the community were represented, and the meetings were open to the public. As time went on, Ann and CP found that they had more in common. Their children were getting an inferior education in the newly integrated schools. CP said, "My kids and her kids both were suffering because we got turmoil in our schools." So they decided to work together to fix it. And they formed an organization called SOS, Save Our Schools. They created an exhibit at the R.N. Harris Elementary School to show children both sides of the community. The exhibit had materials from black and white communities, including a set of KKK robes that CP brought. The goal of the exhibit was to teach all the children about the other parts of their community so that they could foster understanding, and that would end violence and bullying and result in a better education for all. The black children wanted to tear the robes to shreds. When Ann heard this, she told them, "Read the material instead, learn and understand where they are coming from." CP was moved by Ann's action. As he got to know her, his attitudes changed. At their final meeting, he tore up his KKK card, and he and Ann formed a lifelong friendship. An element of compassion is that a peaceable kingdom is inclusive and all God's creation participates, especially known enemies. So Isaiah's words create an image of hope, showing us the power of compassion, and an element of compassion is to be vulnerable. We are most familiar with Isaiah's words at Advent, and that certainly informed Edward Hicks' painting The Peaceable Kingdom, because he portrayed the child as Jesus. But Jesus hadn't been born when Isaiah wrote those words. So another way to interpret that is that a child represents vulnerability. Being vulnerable means we take risk and we experience situations where we may be rejected or we might be embraced. When I served the church in Price, Utah, one of my first visitors was a Pentecostal pastor named Andrew. He invited me to the Ministerial Alliance, and when I went to the first meeting, I was the only woman there. Although there were vast theological differences, I found a group that was generally interested in making our community a better place and understanding other faith traditions. But our relationship was not without strife. There were certain subjects that we did not discuss, and we agreed to disagree. We came together several times for community worship services like Christmas or Easter and Thanksgiving. And the worship services were a lot easier event to attend for people because they could just sit with the people that they knew in their church community. And they left after it was over. We did a community Bible study before Easter, and about 50 people attended. We were tickled. This is a small town. That was a lot of people. I was surprised the discussion was fruitful without any animosity. Then we decided we were going to have a progressive dinner together. And on one August evening, we started at the Methodist Church with appetizers, and nearly 100 people showed up. We were amazed that we purposely told people they couldn't sit with anybody they knew. And that's hard in a small town. It's a lot harder and requires more vulnerability to get out of our comfort zone and to talk to somebody that doesn't think like us or may believe differently than we do. The main course then was at the Christian Missionary Alliance Church, and even more folks showed up, but hardly anyone sat with the people they knew. They sought out new people to sit with. By the time we drove to the next little town and had dessert at the New Life Pentecostal Church, all 125 people were laughing and sharing. Jesus showed up in this room of his followers. Jesus didn't care what our denomination was. An element of compassion is being vulnerable. The calf and the young lion will feed together, and a little child will lead them. As I said earlier, in confusing times, we find ourselves hanging on to our general ideologies. Some are red, some are blue. But what we're looking for is compassion, whose color is purple. It's a place where we're able to love ourselves and one another on a deeper level, and we act from a place of understanding. At each church that I have served, I've learned profound and important lessons in each church. When I first began ministry, I have to be honest with you, there were times that I wish some folks would just find another church. My guess is that those are the same folks that thought that the district superintendent and the bishop should send me to another church. Slowly, I began to realize that my wish was not going to come true, and it was up to me to figure out a way to love one another, no matter how annoying that other person was. I remember sitting at my desk one day, and I realized that the person that was irritating me so much also was very gifted in organizational skills, especially with details, and our records were a mess. It was just the person to do the job. Suddenly this realization came into my heart and my head that I don't care how much you don't like me or I don't like you, I'm still your pastor, and we still have to be church. We continue to disagree on many things, but we did find ways to work solutions for our messy records problem. And through working out our differences and organizing the records, we had compassion for one another. And through understanding, I had compassion. And when I look back on this situation, I know that I was filled with the knowledge of the Lord because God was guiding me to act from compassion rather than being annoyed. The 9th chapter of Matthew has a series of stories where Jesus heals the sick and those who are outcast. In the final verses, we read that Jesus traveled among the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, announcing the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and sickness. Now Jesus saw the crowds, and he had compassion for them because they were troubled and helpless like a sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, "The size of the harvest is bigger than you can imagine, but there are few workers. Therefore, plead with the Lord of the harvest to send out workers for the harvest." The power of compassion is Christ working through us. He called 12 disciples. They were all very different people with various gifts. And then he sent out even more, 72 workers for his harvest. And Christ continues to call us to acts of compassion and send us out into the harvest. We have many opportunities to experience the power of compassion in our personal lives and through this congregation. An important event will be the tables of grace, and those of you who signed up will be sharing a meal together. And it can be an occasion to include others that you may have never known before now. Within our own families, our friends, and our neighbors, the power of compassion can guide us to be vulnerable with those with whom we disagree, especially between now and the beginning of November. When we are filled with the power of compassion, the wolf and the lamb will live together within us. And we are filled with the knowledge of the Lord. The power of compassion will lead us to examine our assumptions, give up taking sides, and do unto others with the love of Jesus Christ. Amen.